Bonjour and hello to all of you. In today's video, I wanted to show you an updated video of my rice vermicelli noodle recipe. I wanted to update it so that this can be a lot easier for you to follow. The recipe is written a lot easier too so that you can successfully make some rice vermicelli noodles at home. And rice vermicelli noodles are super versatile. They're great in a lot of different types of dishes. I love it in salad rolls, as a salad, in noodle soups. It's amazing and also gluten-free, which is really nice. It's quite easy to make as long as you have all the equipment and ingredients to do so. With that, let's go straight into it and I will show you how to make it. Rice vermicelli noodles usually come dried in packets like this. They usually have different thickness. You can buy it skinnier, medium size, or thicker size. Rice vermicelli is also made with just rice and water. These packets are super useful to have in the pantry whenever you just want to cook up some vermicelli noodles for a certain dish. The good thing about these dried vermicelli noodles is that you can actually cook it to the consistency and texture that you like. Now, rice vermicelli noodles is usually just made with rice and water, but for this recipe, I'm going to be using rice flour and tapioca starch. Rice flour is basically the base of this batter, but since we're making this fresh, I do like to add a little bit of tapioca starch to give it some chew. I'm also going to be adding some xanthan gum. For this recipe, I do like to add xanthan gum in here to give it that elasticity and also to stabilize the noodles so that when they're cooking in the hot water, it doesn't break apart. And xanthan gum is actually pretty easy to find. You can find it at any local grocery store, and it's usually located at the baking aisle, and it's a powder form like this. Now, a lot of you might be curious, can you make this recipe without the xanthan gum? And the answer is yes, you can, but the noodles will break apart and look something like this. They're not as strong, and the longer they sit, they do get a little bit softer and stickier. Let's talk about the noodle press. So a lot of you might be curious, where do I get this noodle press in particular? This one might be a little bit harder to find. My mom and I found it from a Hmong vendor that was selling it at the Hmong New Year in California. If you have a Thai, Lao, Vietnamese, or Hmong store near you, I highly recommend checking out those stores. If not, you can also check online or ask around and see if anyone has connections to someone that actually sells this noodle press. So this one is pretty convenient. It has the top part here and the base part here. The top is basically to help push the noodles out, and then the bottom part here has these holes in here to extract the noodles. If you don't have this noodle press in particular, you can actually use a potato ricer as well. And potato ricer is actually a lot easier to find. You can find it online, you can find it at a lot of stores. And the potato ricer usually comes with different attachments. Here it'll have bigger holes, smaller holes. So I like to use the smaller hole here and attach it into the potato ricer, and then you just fill it with the batter and just press it down, and it'll work the same as the first one I showed you. So let's start making the noodles. So here I have my KitchenAid mixer bowl. I'm going to add in my dry ingredients, which is rice flour. I'm going to do equal parts of rice flour and equal parts of tapioca starch. To this, I'm going to add in the xanthan gum and just mix this really well, and then I'm going to set this aside. For the wet ingredients, I'm going to be making a rice flour roux. To make this, I'm going to add in some rice flour into a really good stainless steel pot, along with some salt. I have vegetable oil and some water. Give this a really good whisk, and then I'm going to cook this on medium-high heat and cook this until it starts to bubble. Make sure you whisk it as you cook it so that the rice flour doesn't burn on the bottom. After a couple of minutes, it has bubbled. At this point, once it bubbles, I'm going to continue whisking this and cooking this for about 30 seconds. And it should look something like this. Once the rice roux is done, I'm going to set this aside and let this sit uncovered at room temperature for about 30 minutes to cool down. Once in a while, I'll come back and stir it so that I can release any excess steam. We don't want to add this rice roux while it's boiling hot into the dry ingredients, or else your dough is going to become a little bit too thick to work with. After 30 minutes, I'm going to add in the rice roux straight into the dry ingredients. I'm going to place this onto my KitchenAid mixer and attach the whisk attachment to it. And then I like to start this on level 1 just so that the dry ingredients can get hydrated. Once it's hydrated, then I'll bump up the speed and level up to about level 4. and then up to level 8. If you don't have a KitchenAid mixer, you can also use a hand mixer to mix up the batter as well. So I mixed this for about 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, the dough is pretty much done. It should look something like this. I'm going to take my spatula and just finish mixing this so that it's properly mixed. And while the water is boiling to cook the noodles, I do like to wrap this in plastic wrap so that the dough doesn't dry out. Once I'm ready to use the batter, I do like to use a cookie scoop and place about 3 scoops into the noodle press here. And you just want to fill it about 3/4 full. Place the top on, and then I have here some hot boiling water. I did fill the pot about 3/4 full. You do want it pretty high so that the noodles can actually have space to spread out and cook properly. Let the water come to a boil, and then once you're ready to cook the noodles, turn it down to about medium low. You want it on a very gentle low simmer, and this is preference, but I do like to swirl the water with a chopstick. And then I'll press the noodles in one spot and allow the twirling water to kind of just help the noodles move around. Once the batter is all extracted into the water, just let it sit until you start noticing the noodles coming up to the top. Also crank up the heat to high so that the water comes back to a boiling point so that the noodles can cook properly. Once the batter is all pressed into the water, I try not to touch the noodles because they are pretty fragile right now. Once I notice that it comes to the tops and starts to float, then I'll take a chopstick and just gently separate the noodles apart and allow this to cook for about a minute or 2. Floating noodles pretty much means the noodles are all cooked. So you can take a spider, or like what I'm using here, my mom actually made me a netted spider to just gently take all the noodles out from the hot water and then place it into some cold water to cool down the noodles. I do like to rinse this in cold water about 2 times. And then flip the noodles and place it into the cold water, and you should have some rice vermicelli noodles that look like this. Once the noodles are completely cooled, I do like to take my fingers and individually portion them and place it into a colander to drain any of the excess water. And then I'm going to repeat until all the batter is pretty much used up. So if you're curious how the noodles look by using the potato ricer, this is pretty much how it looks like. As long as you give it a really good steady pressure when you're pressing it down, the noodles will come out looking very nice and even like this. Other than that, it works pretty much the same as the other noodle press. Cool it down and you should have noodles that look like this. And that's it for the fresh rice vermicelli. I do highly recommend eating these noodles the day that they're made. They're texturally a lot better. They are a little bit more chewier. If you do let this sit overnight, or the longer it sits, it does get stickier and a little bit mushier. So I highly recommend eating them the day that they're made. You can enjoy these noodles however you like. I do love it for cold dishes like salads or spring rolls. You can also use this in a noodle soup as well. The only thing about using it in a noodle soup is that the hot broth will make the noodles a little bit more tender and softer. So just a little thing to note. Other than that, enjoy these noodles however you like. If you do want the full written recipe along with some common questions that a lot of people tend to ask me when making this noodle, I have it all written on my website. I'll put the link in the description box so that you can go check it out. Until then, I hope you can give this recipe a try, and I'll see you in my next video.